Welcome to Critical Connections. I'm Evie Cuervo, and I'm joined by my co-host, Kevin Fernandez.
Hey, Evie, thanks for having me. Super excited to talk to Scott.
Today's conversation is about a path you don't see every day, from patrol car to cloud computing and what happens when someone who's actually worn the badge starts shaping the technology and supports for those still on the front lines. Scott Montgomery, welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You spent 13 years in law enforcement, including time with SWAT and collision reconstruction at Bellevue Police Department. Then you made the leap to Microsoft, and now you're leading the law enforcement vertical at AWS. That's quite a journey. What made you trade in the badge for the cloud?
It was all about the paycheck. No, just tease. Actually wasn't. I got to a point in my career to where in law enforcement, absolutely loved my job. I mean, I loved being a police officer. I loved serving the community that I was in. I'd hit a point in my career, like you said, it was about 13 years to where I knew I had one of two paths I needed to choose. Either it was time to promote, start working my way up the ladder inside of the department itself, or if I was ever going to leave, now was the time. I was one that bounced around a lot before I even got into law enforcement. So I tried a bunch of different jobs. And I hit that point to where it felt like my sphere of influence was my community, my department, and that was it. But my passion and my mission was I wanted to see what we could do for the community as a whole. And really that community, I meant law enforcement. I wanted to see what we could do for our brothers and sisters in blue, how it could expand that. And it just so happened that the job with Microsoft found me when I wasn't looking for a job. And it was an opportunity that when it presented itself, initially I was very skeptical because I was like, gosh, why would a big company like Microsoft or a technology company want a SWAT cop that just drove around and did my stuff? Why the heck would they want me? And after spending some time speaking with that hiring manager, also former law enforcement, it was great because the initial interview that we had, he called me up and he said, hey, we're going to talk for 45 minutes. We're going to spend 40 minutes me telling you why you should not leave law enforcement and 5 minutes about that. And I said, great, this is going to be an easy conversation. And in 5 minutes, he lit something in me that was like, wow, there's a bigger mission out there. There's something more I could do, and decided to make that jump at that point.
You went from the street and from law enforcement to Microsoft, then to AWS. That's not a typical career path as a cop, obviously, but more specifically, when did you realize that technology could make a huge impact in the average law enforcement officer's day?
It actually kind of started as a cop. Even though I wasn't involved with technology inside of the agency, I had at least enough of an acumen that when there were certain things that would come up in the agency, for example, we got a new computer in a dispatch system, and I was one of 15 officers that was asked to be a tester on that. We got new computers. Again, I was a tester on those types of things. So I had sort of a taste of the fact of if we progress technology, even inside of our own agency, what could that do? When I then got over to Microsoft and was basically said, hey, you're going to develop the patrol car of the future. Here's a set of keys, figure it out. It was like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden it was exciting because I basically had carte blanche to do what I wanted to do, what I thought cops would want to see. But at the same token, it was incredibly scary because here, again, I knew law enforcement. I knew police work. I knew how to respond to calls. I knew how to do all that kind of stuff. And now all of a sudden you're saying, go talk to technology companies and have them basically sell you on their vision of what it is in law enforcement. So it became one of those things to where I saw all of these incredible ideas, and some of them were so far-fetched that I was like, no, not going to happen. Cops aren't going to do that. So the first iteration, if you will, was what are the things that we can do that cops will adopt right now that are going to make them, whether it be more efficient, safer, things of that nature. And it wasn't long before I started seeing that there were so many things out there. When you're trapped inside of a department, and trapped is probably a bad word, but I'm going to use that. When you're trapped inside of a department, you can't see outside of your own walls. You don't know what's out there. You don't know what technology is available. This is the way we do it. This is the way we've always done it. So be quiet and move forward with what you have. When I got outside those confines and could say, I can do anything. I can literally look at any technology and explore it and examine it. And maybe even for some of these companies say, is there a different way you could do it? The way you're presenting it right now to law enforcement, they're going to say, absolutely not. We're never going to do that. But if you changed it to this, maybe they would. So it didn't take long for me to see that the force multiplier was going to be technology. Full transparency, when I left and went to Microsoft and we started talking about cloud, I mean, this is absolutely no joke. I went on and Googled, what is the cloud? I had no idea. None. I just kind of nodded my head and assumed that I knew what it was. So I had to first and foremost learn what the cloud was before I could figure anything else out. But once I got there, it started happening pretty quick.
Hey, by the way, Scott, I just quickly went on Google and I typed what is, and it populated cloud. So you're not alone in actually having Googled what is the cloud.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the crazy part about it is, I mean, law enforcement and public safety as a whole, is very, very lagging in technology, even today. And I guarantee you, I could probably call 3 or 4 chiefs of police of major metropolitan cities today and ask them, hey, chief, what's the cloud? They wouldn't know.
Just wanted to kind of pick up on something because you said that collision between tech and law enforcement. So you were talking about how potentially if you modify this would catch their attention. Was there a little bit of maybe pushback because, you're the police officer, you're not the engineer per se?
Absolutely. And that persists today. I mean, that hasn't changed. So I'm very fortunate that over the 8 years of kind of post law enforcement going through technology, I've sort of earned a reputation of the fact of, I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear and all that kind of stuff. And so companies and partners and different have come to me and said, hey, take a look at this and tell me what you think. And I'm very transparent. I'm very forward thinking. I would say over the last several years, I've gotten much better at being kinder. Coming from law enforcement, it's kind of a no nonsense approach. So especially internally, when I first got to Amazon, I had some product teams come to me and show me things. And 10 minutes into the call, I basically said, you're wasting my time. When you've got something that actually means something, call me back. Otherwise, don't waste my time. Hang up the call and be done. I don't do that anymore. I'm a softer, gentler, kinder Scott now, but very much so. And I still get that today where it's like, you don't know what the requirements are. You don't know this. And I said, you're right. From a technology standpoint, I can't tell you what code you need to write, but I can tell you what police officers will use and what they won't use.
I'd call you an elite officer.
Oh.
Just curious
Wow.
though, at what point when you transitioned to tech did you just give up on looking like an elite officer?
You mean, when did I get fat? Is that what
I'm
you're trying to
kidding.
tell me?
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Totally love it.
But seriously, what did you know about policing that the tech people didn't? You mentioned that you kind of learned from the tech industry on maybe how to be a bit kinder, but when you really kind of zoom out, what were, in your opinion, when you first started, what were the tech people getting wrong?
I would say the easiest thing right off the bat is user interface. It's got to be, the whole KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid. It's got to be simple, super easy to use. The more complex, it's one of those things to where you hand something complex to a police officer, you could say, hey, if you use this, it's going to save you 10 hours a day. If it's complex, it'll sit in his patrol car and he'll never touch it again. So it has to be something that works into the current workflow. It can't change the workflow. We as police officers, we're very regimented. We like to do things a certain way. We're trained to do things a certain way. I know if I do it this way every time, I'm not going to get in trouble. It's going to get the job done, and I'm comfortable with it. And I've said it a million times, and I'll probably say it a million times during this podcast, a comfortable police officer is a safe police officer. Comfortable by, if I have information, my stress level's down. I'm easy. I can de-escalate. I can interact with people better and all that kind of stuff. If I don't know what's happening and I'm not getting information and all these different things, my stress level's up. And if I come into a hyper stressful situation with me already being hyper stressed, all of a sudden that decision-making flywheel gets really, really fast. And so it's one of those to where I'm having to make literally split second life decisions. And, a lot of times I think we forget that police officers are human. We have emotions. We have bad days. We have kids at home. We have sick kids. We have relationship problems and all those types of things. That doesn't get turned off because you sign into service. You bring it to work with you. I can think of some of the most stressful times in my career were situations to where I'm dealing with kiddos that are the exact same age as my kids at that time with, you know, domestic violence situations to where when I look at it and the female looks like a family member or something like that, you can't turn that stuff off. That's what you
Mm.
bring with you. So when technology gives me the ability to hand an officer or hand a department information where I can get it to them faster, where I can get it to them in an easy, digestible situation. So rather than saying, hey, I want you to log into this new system, it just puts the information in the system they're already using.
Mm.
That's kind of where I find that we find our sweet spots. The most successful companies, the most successful technology businesses. If you can meet the officers where they are and not make them do something completely different, that's where you have success.
Scott, you've been at AWS for 6 years now. What does it actually mean day to day for you in this role?
So the way I describe it, because I've had two groups in my life that when I started this job, first of
Mm.
all was my dad, who basically said, okay, as title, what do you do? I mean, what is it you actually do? And my dad's retired police
Mm.
officer for 44 years. So it's one of those to where, I mean, he knows this business from a law enforcement standpoint. So when you see a title like law enforcement leader, all right, what exactly does that mean? What does Amazon do in law enforcement? My job is sort of 50-50. I spend 50% of my time working with our
Mm.
technology partners. So that's the folks that are building the technology that's being delivered to police officers, computer aided dispatch companies, records management companies, connectivity companies like yourselves. I spend my time working with them, helping them do a couple of different things. Number one, sometimes it's connecting them to
Mm.
the agencies directly. So I'm sort of that connector piece. Sometimes it's helping them with their technology. Hey, we've got this new product we want to launch and we want to release. Give us a once over. Tell us what you think. Is it going to be something that's good? Are there things we're missing? Things of that nature. That's part of it. And then third is sort of being an advocate for the police officers and agencies back into those companies. If there's things that the customers are asking for, I can kind of be that intermediate voice that says, hey, this is a blind spot. This is something that's missing in the market. Is it something that you would be interested in your company in filling that gap? The other 50% of my time is with the end user agencies. It's
Mm.
working with chiefs and sheriffs and commanders and colonels and finding out, what do you need? You know, what are you not getting? Sometimes it is, what's the gaps that you have right now? How can
Mm.
technology fill those? Sometimes it's educating those folks. This is how technology can help you. We have a very unique approach over here, whereas we always start with the customer and work backwards. So the conversations that I have with those leaders is never a, you should. It's always a,
Mm.
how can I help? Tell me what your problems are. Sometimes, and that's the most unique thing about my job, sometimes it has nothing to do with technology. Sometimes it's helping them figure out standard
Mm.
operating procedures. Sometimes it's helping figure out a different workflow. I had our agency recently that we had a conversation, and one of the questions that I brought up to the CIO was, what's your feedback
Mm.
loop? You implement a new technology. How do you find out how it's working? And he said, well, if it's not working good, I hear about it a lot. I'm like, right. But what do you hear if it's working good? Well, if I don't hear anything, I know it's working good. Do you know that it's working good? And so one of the things we're working with them is developing a position inside of their IT department for a badge and gun carrying officer to start being a liaison between the field
Mm.
and IT. And that's a unique position, and it's successful across the country with the agencies that are using it, to where you've got an end user, but they have the technical acumen that they can actually somewhat speak in a language that the technologists are going to understand and say, hey, this is going great. They love the way this works, but nobody uses this feature because it's too hard to do this, and this. I said there's two people. So first was my dad, and the second was my kids. With my kids, it's one of those to where I say that same story, and their response is always, I wish you would go back to doing the
Yeah.
Microsoft car because it was much cooler.
Listen, everybody wants wheels, right? Like, I don't blame them.
That's right.
Actually, I remember the first time I met you, Scott. It was in that car. We were in Washington, and you pulled up, opened up the back trunk with all kinds of goodies and toys, remote control robots that we were launching for distance and controlling them. Really cool
Yeah,
stuff. It was
absolutely.
a very highlight of my career at Dejero.
Hmm.
Actually, is when we were running around with you on that side of it. It's awesome.
I was going to say, those are good times, man.
It was. So speaking of which, so again, you have a very unique perspective that you're on both sides of the table. You're kind of seeing what law enforcement does, and then kind of the goal of industry to try to understand how we can help. The general theme for years now has been agencies that are always being asked to do more with less, whether it's tighter budgets, higher expectations, more scrutiny, certainly over the last few years as well. Specifically around cloud technology, how do you think that helps solve the equation? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, really what cloud does, in my opinion, is it's the equalizer. It's the great equalizer because it's one of those things to where the biggest problem in law enforcement is
Mm.
data rich, information poor. So every time I step out of a police car, I'm getting data, writing down on a fur card, talking to somebody, getting information, getting a driver's license. I am collecting data nonstop. It's never an issue. Now you've got automatic license plate readers and you've got cameras and you've got all these different things. What are we doing with that information? How are we, number one, cleansing it so that it's good information? How are we analyzing it so that it's not just a single point in time? It actually correlates with other things going on. And then how are we delivering that again to the end user? The only way that that's made possible is through cloud computing, simply because we have a singular location where all of this data is coming into. So now we can have the power, the compute power to run the proper analytics across that. And then we have a mechanism that we can deliver that back down into an end user wherever they are on whatever device they happen to have. There's one additional component that I know we'll talk about at some point, which is obviously where you guys land, and that is the connectivity piece. I literally I have unlimited storage and unlimited compute. I have that to offer to
Wow.
anybody in the world. That's the AWS value proposition, if you will. So with that being the case, now with all of that data going in there and using all of those tools and the power of that, and then being able to deliver those insights back to an end user police officer in real time, I've flipped that on its head. It used to be in my day, we would collect all this information, write reports, do all these different things, and then we would turn that over to an analyst. And that analyst would spend weeks and 40 different logins and a bunch of different databases and all that kind of stuff. And they would put together this beautiful report that would give me all this information, all this intelligence on what I'm trying to investigate. Weeks. And then they hand that report back to me. I can now do that in seconds. So that's the force multiplier. But that can only be done by cloud. There isn't an agency out. You take a New York or LA, whomever it is, they cannot build a data center bigger than mine
Wow.
that can do
You
more than we
mentioned
can do.
something earlier, Scott. I want to pick up on it because it kind of is relevant as we move this conversation along. Is you mentioned that there's a lot of skepticism in public safety about new technology. So you're talking about cloud compute and how cool it is and what it can provide. But how do you break through then? I would say probably both internally and externally when you're saying, hey, like as you mentioned, this can help you do something in seconds. How do you get breakthrough? I can't imagine it's easy.
It's not. It's not. And I've been doing this for 8 years and we're finally at sort of a tipping point, especially with cloud. I would say within the last 3 years, we're at that tipping point with cloud to where cloud isn't scary anymore. It used to be. It was when I first started in this business, most chiefs that I talked to said, Scott, we're never going to cloud. It's not going to happen. We're never going to happen. I would say number one, the first best thing that
Mm.
happened to us was COVID. That sounds awful to say, but it really was because those same chiefs were also the ones calling me saying, how quickly can we get to cloud? Because now we have remote workers, now we have all those types of things, and it clicked. I don't have to have people inside of a location. I can have people anywhere. So that was a big differentiator. And then honestly, one of the approaches that we use, and we're not the only ones that use it, is we put our money where our mouth is. We prove it. It's not just a matter of, oh, take my word for it. This is going to work really good for you. We go out and we build proofs of concepts and we do things inside of agencies with their own data, with their own folks. We do training, we do all of that kind of stuff. And then lastly, the thing I would say is that it's the education of you're already using it. You know, there isn't much of anything that's not being touched by the cloud today. Typically speaking, when I meet with the chief and the chief says, we're not going to use cloud, we don't use
Mhm.
cloud and all that kind of stuff. I've done enough research beforehand. Usually I take my phone out of my pocket and I said, you give these to your officers, correct? Yes, sir. We certainly do. You realize that that's all running in AWS today. And it's like, oh, wow.
From what I understand, you got a bit of a side hustle running, and I hope I pronounced this right, Bater Training Group, and did a little bit of research on it. It looks like a hands-on training for law enforcement. Does that connect to any of your work at AWS, or is that something that's completely different?
So it's funny, tangentially, yes and no. That really is focused more on physical
Cool.
hands-on training. So it's teaching not only police officers, but also schools, churches, things of that nature, how to prepare in case there's an active shooter event.
Yeah.
How, because We as police officers, we train that all the time. But the citizens, they don't get that kind of training. I don't know what to do. If I'm at a school and somebody comes in and starts doing bad stuff, I don't know what to do. So myself and one of my former SWAT buddies, we got together and said, hey, we should start teaching civilians what their response should look like and give it from the perspective of, this is what you should do before the police officers get there. And then once they get there, what can they expect? What can they expect from the police? How should they respond to the police? Things of that nature. So we did that. Plus, there's also inside of that same sort of realm, so that K-12 higher ed sort of stuff, there is some technology partners that are involved there that we work with, helping them develop their technology further. There's different training methodologies and things like that. So we try to help them get that. That's sort of funny. I sort of firewall myself from that a little bit because I'm working in that space. So my business partner, I basically will throw things over the fence to him and said, hey, you should talk to these people.
When you think about the work that's being done, what are agencies struggling with right now that cloud solutions can actually fix?
The largest trend, I guess you would see, is the information, what I was talking about, having all of the data and access to the information. So we're getting better, but it's one of those to where the end users, the officers themselves they're getting younger, right? Old guys like me aren't out working the streets much anymore. All of my peers are now chiefs and assistant chiefs and stuff like that. So it's the folks that are in their early 20s or early 30s, they're out working the streets. They've grown up with technology. They've grown up with instant access. If I've got a question, when I was growing up, if I had a question, it was go to the encyclopedia and hopefully it had an answer for me. There wasn't an internet. I couldn't go on and Google anything and all that. The folks that are police officers today, they've grown up with information. So it's hard for them to sit inside of a patrol car and see usually a pretty crummy interface for their computer dispatch system. And when they want more information, not having it. So that's what they're crying out for is, wait a second. I know that this information that I want is sitting in a database someplace that we have access to. I don't, as a police officer in the car, I don't have access to it, but somebody somewhere does. But they have to wait for somebody up the chain, be it a call taker or a dispatcher or a records keeper or whomever, to query that database to return the information to them. They're the ones that critically need that information. They need it right now. So what we're seeing now is being able to put things like chatbots, being able to put information on so that we're garnering information from the telephone call that's coming into 911, running queries on that information in real time, and then delivering that directly to the police officer faster than a call taker can type.
So Scott, do us a favor and rewind the clock a bit. When you were responding to these calls, the CAD system, as you were driving in and responding to what I take it would be obviously an emergency call, what type of information did you have and what were the limits?
Obviously address. So I knew where I was going. Usually it was precursor information. So whatever that first 10 seconds on the phone call, Bellevue 911, what's your emergency? Somebody's trying to break into my house. What's your address? Because we're getting over the system. Even in the old days, we had a thing called Any Alley, which will give you the location of a copper line phone. So Kevin, I don't know if you remember that or not, but we used to have phones that actually had to plug into the wall to actually be able to use.
Weird.
Yeah, I know. The Any Alley system uses that old technology to be able to verify this is the address that is connected to that telephone. So now I had an address. So I've got an address. I've usually got a caller's name, usually first name, because that's about as far as all we get. So I know that Kevin is calling me from this address, reporting there's somebody trying to break into his house. Now my lights and siren go on and I start driving really fast to get to that call. As I'm driving, depending upon the distance, we're going to get more information, hopefully a description of who this person might look, what this person might look like, male, female, clothing. Is it a known person? Do you know who this person is? Do you know if there happens to be any weapons? Is there anybody else in the house? Maybe if we get far enough down the line, is there any cars in the driveway? Things of that nature. Super basic information. And the fact that, again, my information loop is getting really, really short now because the faster I'm driving, the quicker I get there. If once I arrive, I've got all that information, I'm pretty well informed. So now everything from that point forward is radio in my ears or on my mic, whatever it is. If there's updated information, I'm getting that across radio. Keep this in mind. When I'm going to a burglary in progress, I'm stopping a block away, turning all my stuff off, and now I'm walking up or jogging up. So my radio is turned way down. So I'm going to have a hard time hearing what anybody says if it's an update. And now it's all going to become visual observations.
Interesting. Yeah, and I love it. I don't know if you coined the term, but you certainly used it in one of your recent posts, calling that old system a catasaur, which is awesome. Like I said, I'll
Trademark
credit
that.
that to you. And as far
That's
as anyone asks me, that's where I heard it from Scott.
Perfect. I appreciate it.
So that's kind of what good was, let's say, a few years back. What does modern look like today? And keep in mind, like, from your complete respect, kind of the statements you made earlier, where you said from a tech perspective, we would show up and say, yeah, we can solve everything. Just put a drone in the air, have one coming through one of the open windows, throw another robot in there and you're good. But realistically, what would modern look like today?
Absolutely.
In your
So
experience?
modern would look like, and this is something, full transparency, this is being developed as we speak. This is not fully baked yet. We've got the ability to transcribe / listen into the 911 phone call when it comes in. So you've got not only the call taker is listening, but you've also got a bot that's listening, and we're listening for keywords and things like that. So for example, if it comes in and it says, who am I speaking with? I'm speaking with Kevin. Kevin, what's your last name? Kevin Fernandez. Great. The bot will immediately go off and start running Kevin Fernandez and grabbing every bit of information we have on Kevin Fernandez. It will also then take a look at it, compare that to the address that Kevin is saying he's calling from. Does that match up? If it does, fine. If it doesn't, that's fine too, but it's just making sure. Along the way, along this whole chain, and this, I'm speaking a lot slower than it actually happens. Along this whole chain, we're also going to be looking for things like premise history on that address. What else has occurred at that address, not only in law enforcement, but has there been mental health calls? Has there been fire calls? Is there property tax calls? Is there everything? So we're looking across the data set for the entire jurisdiction as to what do we know about the address? So what all do we know about Kevin? What all do we know about the address? What all do we know about known associates with the address, surrounding area, and Kevin? Once those descriptors start to come in, we start looking and say, okay, we know Kevin's known associates. Do any of those descriptors match Kevin's known associates? Is there anyone in the area based upon our jail information system that has recently been released that lives in that area as well? And all of these things are happening simultaneously. We've got all these bots that are out doing all of this work. So the call taker's workflow doesn't change. They're doing the exact same thing they've always done. What we're doing is we're now gathering all of this information across all of our data sets that we have, and we're developing at the end user position. And this is one of the things to where I get to come in and have fun. What information of all of that data as a police officer, what do I want to know right now? Give me a baseball card. Give me a baseball card of what the most important things are. Do I have any premise history? What am I walking into at this house? Does Kevin Fernandez like the police, or does he hate the police? Are there known associates of Kevin's or people associated with that house? Same thing. Love the police, hate the police. Are there weapons involved at that house? Is there anybody else in the area that I should know about? Is it one of those things to where this is somebody calling from Kevin's house and Kevin's phone number because they want cops to show up so that they can shoot him from across the street? So I'm getting all of that premise history and all that kind of stuff. This is done in milliseconds. And now from all of that information, I'm able to deliver in a different methodology, probably not through the CAD. It can go into the CAD notes, but a baseball card, something that's big and bold and 4 or 5 lines on a computer screen for that officer. So in that 30 seconds to 2 minutes that I'm driving, I'm going to get everything that I need to know. Now, also, and this is something that's real today, same thing from that same phone call. We've got intelligence that says burglary in progress, drone is launched. You've got a drone with a camera on, eyes on in 30 seconds. So before I even get there, I have visuals. Real-time crime center is watching that saying, Officer Montgomery, when you arrive, yes, there is a male trying to break into the front door right now. He's this size, da 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 da. So we're getting more intelligence and more information from live video that gives me the information. Now, am I as a police officer driving 100 miles an hour, am I going to watch that video? Absolutely not. But somebody at the real-time crime center is watching it, knows the information that I need, and is going to relay that to me on the radio in real time. So I've got From the stuff that we talked about in old days, Catasaurus,
Hmm.
to modern days, when I arrive on scene, I have so much more information. Again, my stress level is down because I'm still know I'm going to probably get into something here, but I've got so much more information. I know I don't have to worry as much about my six because I've got a drone that's got my six. If somebody sneaks up behind me, the drone's got them,
Mm.
you know? So that's kind of a compare and contrast, if you will, between modern and old.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's night and
yeah.
day.
And with all that information, right, whether it's from body cams or drones or license plate readers or whatever it is, what role then does connectivity play in all of it to ensure that it's all speaking to each other?
That's the key component. And it's one of those to where obviously, yes, we're talking with Dejero, but even if I was talking to somebody else,
Hmm.
connectivity is it's the third leg of the stool, if you will. Because if you don't have connectivity, I say all of the time to our customers, I can have the greatest applications, I can have the greatest cloud infrastructure, I can have the greatest of anything. If you can't reach it, I'm not helping you. So connectivity is that thing. It is the piece that is so essential. There's nobody out there, old school. You go to old school cops and they'll ask you, you ask them, what's the most important piece of equipment on your belt? My radio. It's the only communication that I have. I have to have that. In a modern era where data is gold, connectivity is everything. It's one of those to where we are still typically we're reliant on single. Now, hopefully, they're modern enough to have a 5G SIM, um,
Mm.
but that's it. And every cop in every jurisdiction could take you in their patrol car to the dead spots all over their city. They'll drive you straight to it and say, "This is where I lose connectivity." And they'll sit there, and all of a sudden, you see on the computer, lost connectivity. They know exactly where they are. That's how important connectivity is to law enforcement, that they know exactly where they lose it.
Wow. Well, it's a
Hmm.
great kind of segue to Amazon Leo, formerly known as Project Kuiper. Over 150 satellites already in orbit, 3,000 more are planned. What does that mean for law enforcement?
Game changer. I mean, it's absolute game changer. We have so from a ground standpoint, we have a thing called a direct connect. It's basically dedicated fiber that goes directly from your location directly into an AWS data center. You know, from a fiber standpoint, it's the most robust way to get information out in and out of AWS. Leo becomes direct connect on a stick. Where
People realize how small it is. Like, create a visual around this. Is it bigger than my iPro Max?
it is so three different satellite configurations, or excuse me, antenna configurations. The first one is about the size. I'm going to date myself again. VCR tape.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So that's the first one. That obviously that's more of a home usage, or at some point once the technology gets there, that'll be more of your mobile antenna, something that'll sit on top of a car or whatever it is. Next size up is about the size 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, maybe a little bit larger. That is smaller businesses. You potentially could have something like that at a public safety answering point as connectivity, things of that nature. And then last but not least, it's about the size of a coffee table. And that's your enterprise. That's going to go on top of your big buildings. It's going to go on top of your police headquarters, you know, things of that nature, where you're going to get the most robust throughput. Um, and then that again, put it in a correctional facility, which obviously is built out in the middle of
Hmm.
nowhere. So now all of a sudden, I mean, that's another side of the business that we haven't even talked about. Correctional facilities can't use cloud computing nearly at all because they don't have the connectivity. And then
It's wild.
once you get inside of a building, you know, here's a shocker. Correctional facilities are built out of concrete and rebar. You know, things don't come in and out of those there as far as radio waves and
Oh
things like
yeah.
that real well. So we have to be able to meet them where they're at. And that's the kind of the game changer that Leo is that now we have the ability to bring not just connectivity, robust connectivity to pretty much anywhere.
So, Scott, as you're seeing this roll out, and there's no doubt in my mind that Amazon Leo is going to change the game again on what tools law enforcement can have. But realistically, how do you see this interact with terrestrial networks and maybe other forms of connectivity in the next, let's say, 5 years?
So it's a partnership. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. It's one of those to where it's not going to be just like anything. You know, we have a rule in law enforcement. 2 is one is none. That's just our theology. So like you've got a flashlight. If you've got a big flashlight in your car and you don't have a small flashlight on your belt, you don't have a flashlight. I think of connectivity the same way. If you have one type of connectivity, be it fiber, be it 5G, be it LEO, screw you. No way. You've got to have redundant systems. I'm trying here not to plug Dejero because I think everybody on this call knows how much I love Dejero and I love the concept behind Dejero and have for years, because it really is, again, to me, it's one of those, if you've got a concept to where, what are you doing today? Oh, we're using fiber with an LTE backup. Great. Love it. What if you could do fiber with multiple 5G band backup in conjunction with satellite, but guess what? You don't have to manage it. You plug it all into one spot and say, this is what I want, make it happen. And then from that point forward, you never worry about your connectivity again. Agencies, IT departments, everybody else, they've got enough to worry about that they don't need to worry about whether or not my systems are up from a connectivity standpoint. If there's a solution to where I can plug everything into one spot and say, just give me the connectivity that I need. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care what network it's running over. I need connectivity. Then that's the spot where you really get to. I always think back to a story. There's a guy that I work with, my solutions architect that I work closely with. His name is Doug. Doug is brilliant, absolute genius. And
Shout out to Doug.
Shout out to Doug. When Doug came over and started working with us, we went to our first call together. We were talking about a computer dispatch system. And I asked the agency, I'm like, hey, what's your uptime for your CAD solution? And they said, probably about 95% of the time. And I come from the industry. I was like, that's pretty good. Pretty awesome. 95%. It's not bad. We got off the call and Doug called me up and he goes, I just want to clarify something. And I said, sure. And he said, they said that their CAD solution is down 5% of the time. And I said, yeah, it's pretty impressive, isn't it? He goes, do you realize that the world that I come from, if the Netflix blue circle spins more than about 3 times, we're getting 1 million phone calls. That's somebody's movie. CAD, we're talking life and death. And you're telling me that 5% of the time is okay? And it kind of smacked me in the face because I was like, no, man, you're right. That's not okay. It shouldn't be that way. And yes, some of it's application. Yes, some of it's infrastructure. But 90% of the time, it's connectivity. That's what's causing these outages, is the fact that they lose connectivity some way or another, whether it's the rogue backhoe that travels all over the country cutting fiber lines or whatever it is. And so, we at AWS, we've developed our infrastructure in such a manner to where we develop that reliability, So if your infrastructure is running in AWS, we have a SLA guarantee that we will give you for that. We really work with our partners very closely to say, hey, we need to make sure that you're using best practices so that your SLAs match our SLAs. So it's not, you've got this infrastructure that's okay 5 nines of the time, but an application that only runs 90% of the time. And then the last prong of that, again, is that third leg of the stool, which is you need to make sure that you have redundant capabilities in your connectivity system so that connectivity is never a problem. That should never be your issue. In my humble opinion, connectivity is a no-brainer. So you have to do whatever you have to do. We've gone as far as to talk to some agencies that when we start talking about all these different weird new things, first thing we'll start talking about, what's your network look like? Let's talk about your network first. Before we start building out these great cloud infrastructures, what does your network look like? Because if you can't get to us, it doesn't matter how cool we do stuff.
You said it before. Let's say national and federal agencies, they call PACE, which is you always have a backup plan, your primary, your alternate, your contingency, and your emergency. How you can then combine all those things is up to different vendors and different architectures. But at the end of the day, it's the exact same thing as your flashlight analogy, which is great. I'm going to use that too, which is you need to have backup plans to backup plans because lives are at stake.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's a really unique integration between Amazon Leo and AWS, where you have the data, it goes from a terminal in the field to satellite to AWS infrastructure. What does that mean in terms of seamless connection for public safety?
So it's one of those to where basically if you're using AWS and you're using Leo, your data never leaves our infrastructure. So it allows you to do a lot of things. Obviously, speed is huge. Latency goes way, way down if we're not transversing multiple clouds and mergeable networks and all that kind of stuff. But it's also one of those things to where even though we're not a company, yes, we would love for everybody to have all of their data in AWS, but we're not naive enough to think that that's going to be the case. There are going to
Mm.
be data sets that are across, whether it be on-premise or other cloud providers and things like that. We get that. But if the number of hops or the number of leaps or the way, the ability to keep that inside of one set of infrastructure, both network and compute, the ability to do things is so much greater. It's
Mm.
one of those to where we have conversations a lot because again, we've got, excuse me, great competitors in the market today that are doing really great things inside of law enforcement. And I love that. So I would never tell an agency, hey, you should move all your stuff out of there because we're better. Maybe we're not better.
Mhm.
Do what's best for your agency. All I ask is that let's look at it from a holistic standpoint and where is it best to position, whether it be your data analytics engine or things of that nature. If you've got a couple of data sets over in another cloud provider and the bulk of your data is in AWS, you should definitely look at what's your connectivity solution so you can get in and out of AWS faster. We can help you pull from other cloud providers or on-premise or stuff like that. But if most of your data is residing in AWS, the speed to innovation, the speed to insights is so much faster that that's where you start really having game-changing differences inside of an agency.
You've said your mission is to make a positive impact in the world. What does success look like for you?
It's funny. I always go back to at the end of the day, I've got lots of people that I serve, but at the end of the day, my heart is always going to be on patrol. So it's one of those to where I've said, and I've said it publicly, and I'm obviously going to say it publicly again. My goal is, I hope before I leave my career, is that when a police officer knocks on a door, he has so much information and knows exactly what's going on the other side of that door so that they're safe. They go home that night. I mean, at the end of the day, that's all we try to do, right? We just want to make sure we go home
Mhm.
at the end of our shift. And if I can help officers go home, I've done my job. I mean, because all of the things that lead up to that are going to make the world a better place
Mm.
because we're going to have insights, we're going to have information, we're going to treat people better. We're going to give officers the tools that they need to meet people where they are. Right now, officers are meeting people where they see them and may not have background, may not have insights, may not have any of those things. If we have that and we can give officers that information, then they're going to meet people where they're at, not where they see them.
Mm.
I think of stories. One of my favorite stories is at a guy that I used to lived in my city, well, stayed in my city, we'll call it, because he was homeless. Great informant. He knew everything that was going on the streets. And I'd get together with him. Usually I'd buy him a cup of coffee and a hamburger, and we would sit and talk, and he would give me all kinds of intel. Right before I left law enforcement, I went to him and I said, man, I said, let me help you get a place to stay. Let me help
Mm.
you get off the streets. And he looked at me and he said, Officer Montgomery, he said, does it mean I'm going to have to stop doing drugs? Does it mean I'm going to have to live by somebody's rules? And I said, yeah, it is. He goes, I don't want to go. He goes, out here, I'm my own
Mhm.
boss. He said, I don't hurt anybody. You know me. I'm just out here doing my thing. And he didn't. He was a sweetheart. But it was one of those things to where I had the opportunity to meet him where he was and I got it and it made sense.
Mhm.
And all I did was pass on information to the next guy behind me saying, man, take care of him. Make sure he stays
Yeah.
safe. If he needs your back, have his back because he'll take care of you too. That's the types of stories that I think I want to see more of is meeting people where they're at in law enforcement. We don't have a great name right now. And that's bad because
Mm.
99.99% of the police officers out there, they're out there to do an amazing job. They want to take care of people. They want to take care of their community. And most importantly, they want to go home at night. So
Mm.
they don't want to do anything that's going to hurt people and all that kind of stuff. And we've forgotten that a little bit. So if there's anything that I can do to help make police officers safer and the community to understand that, hey, this is what they need, that's what I'm all about. So that's what success would look like to me.
You started as a police officer at 22 years of age on Bainbridge Island. You've been through SWAT, collision reconstruction, Microsoft, and now AWS. If you could go back in time and tell that rookie one thing about where, this career would take him, what would you say to yourself?
Be ready for change
Mm.
because it's not going to stay the same. I'm a very regimented sort of guy. I had my career path planned out, all the way up until SWAT. When I left Bainbridge and I got over to Bellevue, it was okay. At 2 years, I want to get on SWAT. At 4 years, I want to get on traffic. Then it's promotion to this. Then it's promotion to that. I had it planned out, and I was on that track. Bang, bang, bang. Everything was going. Wheels came off the track when the first time I tested to promote. It didn't go well, and it shocked my world. And I was like, this isn't the way it's supposed to happen. I'm supposed to be doing this. And shortly thereafter, I got a phone call from Microsoft. So it would be keep your eyes open, be ready for change, and embrace it. Take the risks.
Hmm.
Scott, again, thank you very much. Always a great time to spend with you. Really appreciate the stories and your perspective.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure.
Scott Montgomery, thank you for being on Critical Connections. Such a great conversation.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity.
That was Scott Montgomery, who is a leader with the law enforcement vertical at Amazon Web Services and founder of Dejero Training Group. You can connect with Scott on LinkedIn or learn more about AWS's public safety solutions at aws.amazon.com. Thank you for listening to Critical Connections. Stay safe, stay connected. Until next time.